Good morning. I'm Anna Marie De La Vega. This is Focus. Thank you for joining us today. We have a return guest. I guess we haven't had you here in quite a while, and I apologize for that. Dr. Lametra Scott, the founder and CEO of Breaking the Sickle Cell Cycle Foundation. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. I know it's a mouthful, but hey.
I know, and I got through it this time, didn't I? I hope so. So we're going to talk about what sickle cell is, sickle cell disease, first of all. And then we'll be talking about the foundation and what's being done and the help that is offered and things like that, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so what is sickle cell disease?
Well, sickle cell disease, in a nutshell, it's a genetic red blood cell disorder that causes excruciating pain because the red blood cells can clump together, block blood flow, and wherever there's no blood flow, that can cause excruciating pain, organ damage, increased risk for infection, stroke, and unfortunately, premature death if not treated. I had to put that caveat in there. If not treated.
I know this is a little bit off topic, but it's a little tangential here. I watched called The Midwife, and they did an episode with some people who on some people who had sickle cell disease. And this was supposed to be dated like way, way back, like in the 50s and early 60s. And so they didn't know as much about it, but they were showing the people experiencing the pain and not realizing that that's what was going on, and seeing their little boy who was experiencing pain and was listless, and they could tell something was off, but they didn't know what, and them figuring that out. Has it just been the 50s and 60s and such since we even kind of really knew what was going on?
Absolutely not. Sickle cell disease was discovered back in the early 1900s.
Good.
It's actually the first genetic molecular blood disorder that was ever discovered. So with that being said, one would think that we would be further along in being able to diagnose sickle cell disease very early on, or even having more treatment options available. So it's a catch-22 because the sickle cell disease testing, it is a part of the newborn screening now in all 50 states. But when I say now, it wasn't a part of all 50 states until the late 90s.
Yeah.
Is when that particular screening was made a part of the panel for the newborn screening test. So in today's time, yes, we're able to diagnose babies when they're born with sickle cell disease. The problem comes into play in terms of treatment options that are available. There are not very many treatment options available for sickle cell disease, even though it was discovered back in the early 1900s.
What got you interested in putting so much of your career into this and founding the organization?
Life. And when I say life, I was one of the millions of people who do carry the sickle cell trait. But in my case, I was not aware that I was a sickle cell trait carrier until actually I had my son. My son was born and he had sickle cell disease. I did not know that I was a carrier of sickle cell trait because I was born back in the day when sickle cell trait screening testing was not a part of that newborn screening panel.
Whoa. Is that something that you fought for, or were they on track to do that already?
No, this is not something that I advocated for it personally, but they were already on track to have sickle cell trait testing done to be a part of the newborn screening. Each state just had a different time in which they added it to their newborn screening panels. Do
you mind talking about your son who has it, how you realized it, what was going on?
When I was about 12 weeks, I would say, in between 12 and 16 weeks pregnant, and I was going to my OBGYN to get regular testing done, and that is when she informed me that I was a sickle cell trait carrier. And to my surprise, I said, "A what?" So I had only learned about sickle cell trait during genetics when I was in school. That was my kind of introduction to genetic things that can be passed on. That was it. So there was no screening beyond what I just received from my OBGYN to let me know that I was a sickle cell trait carrier. So fast forward, we find out that my son's father is also a sickle cell trait carrier. So when both parents carry the trait for sickle cell disease, there's a 25% chance that the baby could have sickle cell disease. There's a 50% chance that the baby could be a sickle cell trait carrier. There's a 25% chance that the baby could be absolutely normal and not inherit any of the traits. It's just a roll of the dice in terms of which one of those probabilities you will end up with. And for us, we were in that portion of the 25% where the baby can have sickle cell disease. My son was born. We took him to get tested. Shortly afterwards, I would say he was about maybe 8 to 10 weeks old. So yes, they do the newborn screening, but because the way the hemoglobin works, you have fetal hemoglobin initially from birth. Then at about the 6-week time period, the body starts to make normal adult hemoglobin. So that's why you can't do the testing earlier, because you may get a false negative because the hemoglobin does switch. Well, hemoglobin is important because that is where in lies the genetic defect, I will say, for sickle cell trait, is when you have abnormal hemoglobin that is being made. So
and what is hemoglobin?
Hemoglobin is important because that's the part of your red blood cell that actually carries the oxygen. And we all, we need oxygen for everything that we do. And blood flows through every portion of your body. It's the existence of your being. So my son was tested well after the time period where we should have known what his genetic status was. And unfortunately, with the way that we are in screenings, we actually received some misinformation.
Oh, no.
Misinformation was that my son only had sickle cell trait. And I say that misinformation because a number of people, even in the healthcare field, are not knowledgeable about sickle cell disease, sickle cell trait. Sometimes they use the words synonymously when they're not the same.
Oh.
Yeah. So people who are not hematologists or who are not experts in this field, they may not readily know the differences between the two. And in our situation, we received some information that was not completely accurate. My son actually has sickle cell disease type SS and not sickle cell trait. That was my life experience that kind of threw me into the fire, as they say. And, being immersed in, okay, now that my son has this chronic condition, what do I do? How do we fix it? What are our options? So that's kind of how it all began. And because of my own experiences of not knowing what my sickle cell trait status was, how we went to a medical provider, and even though this provider did all the testing, we still received some misinformation. So in my role as a pharmacist at the time, what I was doing was disease state management. So I would educate providers among, how to manage a lot of different disease states, how to do it in a pharmacoeconomic way where we don't compromise patient care.
Okay, and what did you say, disease state? What does that mean?
Management. So we do disease state education and management. That means, how do you manage your diabetes? How do you manage your cholesterol? And when I say manage, from a pharmaceutical perspective, what medications are best utilized to treat this particular disease state based on what's going on? And as we all know, in healthcare, medications are expensive. So in helping companies manage their budgets, how do we do this while not breaking the budget, but also not compromising patient care so that we can still get good outcomes and help people improve their health?
Wow.
So I turned all of that to sickle cell disease and wanted to find out, what can I do in this space with this skill set that I do have for disease state management and education? How can I utilize that skill to help in sickle cell disease? So that's where Breaking the Sickle Cell Cycle Foundation was born. It was born out of a way and a means to try to figure out, how do we break this cycle? Because I didn't know that I was a trait carrier. Many other people may not know that they may be trait carriers. We have a number of people within our healthcare field who may not be well-versed in sickle cell disease. How can we break the cycle of misinformation in that capacity as well?
Oh, wow.
So it's full circle now. And what I do with the foundation is raising awareness about sickle cell disease, encouraging people to get sickle cell trait tested, regardless of what their skin color is. Because a lot of people think, oh, that's something that just impacts minority populations, and it's not. As I said before, sickle cell disease is a blood disorder. And every one of us, we all have blood. No matter what color our skin is, we all bleed red. So sickle cell disease is a blood disease. It's not a black disease. And that is what I, toot my horn on in terms of educating the community to raise awareness about sickle cell disease, sickle cell trait, and encouraging people to get sickle cell trait tested.
What about it if they're past childbearing years? They're not going to have any kids. Should they still do that?
Yes, they should still do that, because people who have sickle cell traits, they are predisposed or have an increased risk of developing kidney cancer. And sometimes when that kidney cancer is diagnosed, it's oftentimes stage 3, stage 4.
Holy cow.
And it's not to say that every person who has sickle cell trait will get kidney cancer.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what that means. It just means that you have an increased risk. So therefore, if you were to have some issues with your kidney and not to dismiss it and say, oh, I just have a kidney infection.
Mm-hmm.
Or if sometimes people see that they have urine in their blood and
Or
they may...
blood in their urine.
Yeah, blood in their urine. You're right. I said it backwards. They may have blood in their urine, and oftentimes that may be dismissed as, oh, I just have a bladder infection or I've got a kidney infection. That's what this is caused by.
Whoa.
That's reason to do a little more digging to find out exactly what's going on here, because that may be your only sign that you've got something else brewing in the space of this could be, a kidney cancer kind of thing, and I need to get this checked out.
Wow.
So that's why. Also, if you have diabetes, and we know that a lot of people in America have diabetes, if you have sickle cell trait, that can also interfere with the A1C testing that's done in diabetes. So the A1C is basically a measure of how well your blood sugars are being managed. And if you have sickle cell trait, sometimes that trait can interfere depending on what type of testing is used to test for your A1C. That can also interfere. And that's something that your doctor needs to be made aware of so that they know when they go to test your A1C to make sure that the lab is using a test that does not have erroneous results because of the fact that sickle cell trait may be present.
Oh, my goodness. How do we get that test?
Well, it is something that you can talk to your provider about, especially if you think that there may be a family history of sickle cell trait or sickle cell disease. Mm-hmm. If you are from areas that were endemic to malaria, and malaria has a tie here because people who have ancestry from areas that were endemic to malaria, those are the areas where sickle cell disease and sickle cell trait is most prevalent. So when we think about that, yes, we know that Africa is endemic to malaria. Even in today's time, we hear about malaria there. But outside of Africa, we also have the South and Central America. We have the Middle Eastern areas of Turkey, Italy, Greece, Southeast Asia. So that's a lot. Those are a lot of places outside of just Africa. So if you have any ancestry from any of those places that were endemic to malaria, you could have the sickle cell trait and not even know it. Mm-hmm. So again, talking to your healthcare provider if you have ancestry, if you have family history. And also, we offer sickle cell trait testing at community events that we do. Oh. Typically, you'll find us at health fairs, church events. We partner with a number of colleges and universities as well. Good. In providing sickle cell trait testing. So it's across the board, no matter your age, no matter your race, creed, religion, you need to know what your sickle cell trait status is.
Did you know all of this when you first started looking into treatment options and ways to treat or cure your son?
No. This has been a journey that I have been on now for the past 12 years, because he's 12 years old. Well, he'll be 13 in a couple of weeks. There's not a lot of information. You don't see PSAs on the TV. You don't see billboards when you drive down the street about know your numbers or know your status. You don't see that. No. So this is something that I have had to immerse myself into. Now, once I got into the space, there's a vast amount of information that is available. But if you don't even know where to go from the beginning, how do you even know that there's this wealth of information to tap into? Or
that it matters for you to be tested.
Right.
I know I got to a certain stage and I asked my doctor, at this point in my life, are there tests I should be taking, like a bone density test or so-and-so? And he goes like, well, yes. And I'm like, well, you didn't tell me. I had to ask. You sometimes have to be your own advocate.
Exactly.
And dig in and go like, is there anything that I need to know about myself that could affect my health? And this is one of them.
Right. Especially in the space of sickle cell disease. So if you find that you or a loved one does have sickle cell disease. And I mentioned earlier that there are not a lot of treatment options available. When I say not a lot, I can count the number of treatment options available for sickle cell disease on one hand and not even use all my fingers.
Oh, my.
So that just goes to show you how small it is an area where we have medical options that are available. So in order to manage sickle cell disease with what we have, a lot of it is tied into what you can do from a natural holistic standpoint of things.
Mm-hmm.
And also sometimes you may have conversations with your doctors and they may not fully understand all the research that you've done, especially when it comes down to natural therapies to go along with whatever they may choose to implement from a medical pharmaceutical standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's important to have those conversations. Don't think of it as a one-way street in terms of, well, my doctor said do this, and that's the only thing I can do.
Yeah.
Or my doctor said don't do this, so therefore I'm not going to push the envelope. Don't be afraid to have those conversations, because at the end of the day, you are a valuable member of your healthcare team, just like the doctor is, just like the nurse is, just like your therapist may be, or your case manager. You have a role as well. You have to be your own healthcare advocate in whatever capacity that is. This is not a PSA to say go be confrontational with your doctor.
No.
It's about building relationships. So you have to have that relationship built with your healthcare team so that when you do bring ideas to the table, you all can have a conversation about it.
If you're just joining us, I'm Anna Marie, and this is Focus, and we're talking today with Dr. Lametra Scott, the founder and CEO of Breaking the Sickle Cell Cycle Foundation. I think a lot of times, most of us don't think of ourselves as part of our healthcare team. I'm part of my own team. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like I just delegate that responsibility to everyone else. I'm just going to sit here and you're going to diagnose me and then you're going to get me better. I'm just going to let you call all the shots. But we have to take part in it. And that's a good way that you put that I'm a member of my own healthcare team.
Yes.
And I need to remember that, take responsibility.
Yes.
And not just go, okay, that's what they said. Oh, I love that. Dr. Scott, you're fantastic at this. What are some of the holistic type ways? You're saying like, and we'll get into some other the treatments, but things that people who have been diagnosed as either having the trait or having the disease. What are some things that you've learned that may be helpful?
I have to start by saying this is not medical advice.
Yes.
Information that is being provided should be consulted with your healthcare provider. As we're saying, take these topics to your healthcare provider if you find something that is of interest to you and have a conversation to see if this will be best fit for your situation.
Right.
Now that we have the disclaimer out of the way, we talk about supplements. That is one of the, I would say, a booming industry in where we are right now in today's time. You see supplements for everything under the sun. That is true, and supplements are very important, especially in sickle cell disease, because people oftentimes use up their resources that they may have as far as nutrients go. They may use them rather rapidly because the body is constantly trying to make more red blood cells. So sickle cell disease, also termed as sickle cell anemia, and that anemia comes because you have a reduction in the number of red blood cells that you have. In order to make those red blood cells, you need those micronutrients available. So you need folic acid, you need iron. And in sickle cell disease, people oftentimes hear the term of anemia, oh, I need iron. That may not be the case for you because your iron levels may be great, but this is something that you need to discuss with your provider, because sometimes people do need iron if they have anemia, but when they have sickle cell anemia, it may be different. So again, making sure that when you go to pick up those supplements, that you're picking up supplements that are good for you. I would say omega-3 vitamins. Omega-3 is good for anybody, no matter if you have sickle cell disease or not, because omega-3 vitamins, fish oils, are good for reducing inflammation in the body. So that could be of benefit to anybody who's suffering with a chronic condition. Vitamin D. We're oftentimes very deficient in vitamin D. And that is also another one of those vitamins that is beneficial no matter if you have sickle cell disease or not. Vitamin D is very instrumental in helping to bolster your body's ability to produce those red blood cells and the other cells that you may need. I would say zinc. Zinc is another important supplement because people who have sickle cell disease, oftentimes they are deficient or their immune system doesn't function as well. So zinc is another one of those agents that can be helpful in helping bolster your immune response.
Okay, that makes sense because that's why they sell them as the cold buster type things.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So that's in the supplement space. Those are some of the major ones, I would say. Oh, vitamin C. I forgot about that one. Vitamin C is a good antioxidant. What that means is that it helps to stabilize your red blood cells, just your cells in general. So what that means is it makes them less likely to lyse and to break. So in sickle cell disease, those cells are very fragile. So if you have an antioxidant, it's almost like a protective barrier around your cells. It's
Wow.
what it's conveying.
Yeah.
So those cells can last a little bit longer. So those are some of the major ones, I would say. And then when you talk about foods, you are what you eat. When you eat foods, whether you have sickle cell disease or not, you want to make sure that you limit the amount of processed foods, limit the amount of sugars. And I know we hear this all the time as it relates to weight management and trying to make sure that we don't consume these things that our body just really doesn't know what to do with them, and it just stores them away as fat.
Mm-hmm.
So in sickle cell disease, you want to make sure that you consume as much natural foods as you can. So eating your whole foods, your fibrous foods, your leafy green vegetables, your fruits and berries, those are all natural foods that can provide you with some of those micronutrients that you need and as well in managing your sickle cell disease.
If you've been diagnosed with sickle cell disease, what happens and what makes it be called sickle cell? What's going on that we're trying to help change?
So in sickle cell disease, you have a defective gene we talked about earlier that encodes for hemoglobin. So in sickle cell disease, when your body is dehydrated or either deoxygenated, and those two conditions may come about. One, dehydration is self-explanatory. You don't have enough water. Deoxygenated means that you may be participating in something, whether it be a physical activity, aerobic activity, something to that degree that is using up your oxygen. So when those two conditions exist, it causes that cell to change its shape. It begins to take on a sickle shape instead of having this round, squishy donut kind of shape. That's what a normal red blood cell would look like. In sickle cell disease, when it becomes deoxygenated, dehydrated, it begins to take on the form of a sickle. And instead of it being soft, it now becomes hard and rigid and sticky. So the physical properties of the cell actually changes. That hard and sticky cell, it sticks to other cells around it. It sticks to the blood vessel wall. And basically you get a great traffic jam because blood is supposed to flow freely. But in sickle cell disease, that doesn't occur because of the blockages, because of these cells that are sticking together, sticking to the blood vessel wall. Blood can't flow freely. So therefore, we have this issue.
And your body can't make enough new oxygen that fast.
No, it cannot. It's not that the body is making the oxygen. The body can't make the red blood cells fast enough
To carry the oxygen.
Right. So and then when they do make red blood cells, you're in a constant deficit because your body is constantly using them up all the time.
Oh, wow.
So that is what causes the decreases in oxygen in sickle cell disease because of the red blood cells are being destroyed relatively quickly.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with Dr. Lametra Scott, the founder and CEO of Breaking the Sickle Cell Cycle Foundation. Now, you said your son has sickle cell disease.
Yes.
Is it okay to ask, what is his life like compared to another 12-year-old's?
I would say for the most part, we try to do as much as we can to keep things normal. In the summertime, he likes to swim. But in sickle cell disease, that swimming episode could technically end him in the hospital without proper precautions. So what does that mean? In sickle cell disease, the sickle cell crisis can be triggered by changes in temperature. Changes in temperature because when you swim, you get out of the water, you're cold. Well, when you're cold, your body starts to shiver. Guess what? Your blood vessels begin to close or to shrink up because they're trying to conserve your energy. So what happens in that case, in sickle cell disease, it makes it very hard for your sickle cells to flow through the blood vessels because they're now more narrow. That blocks blood flow, which can cause pain, which can lead you into a sickle cell crisis. So because I want him to be able to experience the joy of swimming like any other kid, the things that we do, I think when he was a little bit younger, I bought him a wetsuit. a wetsuit because we're trying to conserve that body heat and making sure that there's not this drastic change in temperature between getting out of the water and not.
Mm-hmm.
So outside of doing the wetsuit, another thing that we do is immediately once he's out of the pool, dry off and get into dry clothing.
Yeah.
Because we want to limit the amount of time that he's exposed to this drastic temperature change from being in the water and not. So that's just one example of things that most kids like to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want him to miss out on it.
Yeah.
So these are things that we may have to do differently so that he can, enjoy that.
And we take it for granted.
Yeah, if you don't have this issue, it's not something that you even think about.
No, of course
Playing
not.
basketball, playing sports. He likes to play basketball. And it's not to say that he can't play basketball. It's just that when he plays basketball, if he feels like he's winded, if he feels like I don't have enough energy, I need to take a break, then that's exactly what we do. We take a break. He has water. And this is something that I have shared with his coaches as well. When he's playing the game, he can't play from the first quarter to the fourth quarter. He may have to play, in stints,
Mm-hmm.
just so that we can make sure that he's not going into a crisis and that he gets what he needs in terms of rehydration, oxygenation by taking a break and just resting and allowing the body to recuperate, basically.
Yeah.
And then he's able to get back in. This is true, I would say, these are things that we have to do to allow him the ability to participate in things that most kids would like to participate in and to stay out of the hospital.
Is there a lot of pain?
There is a lot of pain, and that pain is typically managed with opioids, not just for my son, but for any person who has sickle cell disease.
Mm-hmm.
I would say his first dose of opioids actually came when he was about 6 months old.
Oh.
He experienced something that's called dactylitis. That's where you have blockage of blood flow either in your fingers or toes. In his case, it was in his little hand. He was 6 months old, and I'll never forget this. I took him to the doctor because his little fingers looked like he had been stung by a bee. They were swollen just that big.
Oh.
And what they did was they admitted him to the hospital. He received a morphine infusion and fluids, and we just had to wait for that to resolve. So from the age of 6 months up until the age that he is now, which is 12, he's been taking opioids for the past 12 years. In 2023, the FDA did approve a groundbreaking procedure by way of gene therapy. So that's where we are in today's space, is that we do have gene therapy available for people who have sickle cell disease. And I will say the caveat is it's groundbreaking, it's one of its kind, but it's not readily accessible to every person who has sickle cell disease. It's important, it's great, and we're moving in the right direction. But the problem that we have now is that it is new. It does cost a lot of money, I would say to the tune of $3 to $4 million.
Oh.
So that is one of the barriers to access.
Yep.
So we have this gene therapy, and to put it briefly, gene therapy is when they're able to genetically modify your DNA. So we talked about what causes that hemoglobin to actually change shape. It's because we have a genetic code that does not have the right messaging for it. So we're able to take a gene editing process, take out the part of the gene that's encoded incorrectly. The body is able to heal itself, and it goes back to making that fetal hemoglobin that I talked about earlier on. That's important because fetal hemoglobin does not sickle because it doesn't have that messaging that encodes for the sickling of the cell.
Wow.
That is where we are in today's time. So this is what I say. It's called changing the game in sickle cell disease.
Yeah.
We're changing the game because for over 100 years, there have not been a lot of treatment options available for sickle cell disease. There was, or there still is, the bone marrow transplant where you can get a transplant from a matched donor and you can be rid or be cured of sickle cell disease because you got donor cells that from a person that does not have sickle cell disease.
Oh my.
And your body can, take on their genetic makeup. But that required you to have a matched donor. Most people, or a lot of people, don't have a matched donor. That means a sibling or somebody who's a very close, almost 100% match. So that wasn't a viable option.
What do we do with that information?
Be your own healthcare advocate. If you have a family member or yourself and you are impacted by sickle cell disease, there are transformative and curative treatment options available. And sometimes you may have to be the messenger. Talk to your doctor, talk to your provider. about what does it look like in your case to pursue gene therapy.
All right. Dr. Lametra Scott, the founder and CEO of Breaking the Sickle Cell Cycle Foundation. btsscycle.
Cycle.org.
Breaking the Sickle Cell Cycle is what we're looking for. Or we can Google it.
Yeah, you can Google it. If you just spell sickle with 2 S's, you'll find us.
Okay, good. Thank you again, Dr. Scott, for joining us. That's it for today's Focus. Please make sure you join us again next week. I'm Anna Marie de la Vega for Focus.